Hi there, this is Julia from Grad Skills Pro. Today we're going to talk about how to write a paper with the ideas framework. This is going to be the first one of 6 videos in this series. So here we're going to talk about why you should care about honing your writing skills in science. Then second, we're going to talk about the assumption that costs most graduate students a lot of time and happiness, often without even realizing it. Then third, we're going to talk about what the ideas framework is. And lastly, how it beats writer's block and how you can use it to substantially cut down your time from writing to submission. So first, why should you care about honing your writing skills? So one main thing is, if you haven't realized it yet in academia, scientific publications are the currency of any academic career. Undergrads have a higher chance of getting accepted into graduate school if they have a publication on their CV. Graduate students need publications to graduate. And for grad students and postdocs, the more or higher quality publications they have on their CV, the higher their chances are for a better or more well-paid job or even faculty position offer. So really, scientific communication is the #1 skill in your career. So think about when you're starting out as a graduate student and you double along for quite a while until you figure out like what your research project is going to be, how to write your first paper. So that's going to take you, let's say, a year and a half. And then secondly, you do the same thing. You might have learned something from the first iteration. It'll go a little bit faster. So if you keep going like this, probably you can have 2 or 3 publications on your CV by the time you graduate. But if you learn this skill very early in grad school, can you imagine like what would actually happen if you could cut down the writing time to a fraction of the time? And if instead of needing a year and a half to write your first paper, if you could actually write this in like less than a year. So if you would keep going like this, you wouldn't make as many mistakes. You would actually know how to do this from the get-go. And therefore, by the time you graduate, you could easily have 5 first author publications on your record. And ultimately, this will make you a lot more competitive in the job market later on. Scientific writing is also important to establish yourself in the scientific ecosystem, right? You need papers to find collaborators. You need to be able to collaborate productively, again, to get a job, to get funding, and also like for you to remember exactly what you did and how you did it. I cannot remember how often I went back to my own papers to actually figure out, how did I do this? What data set did I use? How exactly did I do this? And so this is really important for yourself to keep reminding yourself what you did. And then also, if you think about a recruiter, right? If you were a recruiter, who would you hire? Would you hire the person with a recent PhD who has one okay paper on their CV, but when they talk about their science, you can't really understand what's going on? It's like way too detailed. It's completely out of your area of expertise. Or would you hire the recent PhD with, let's say, 4 first author paper and 3 conference talks, and who can actually make you excited about their research, right? So this is really what you need to think about when you go through grad school to figure out what's important for you and for your career and for your happiness and productivity. The question of who would you pick for that job that you have really shows how important the number and the quality of publications are for being competitive in the job market. So, and again, if you learn these skills early, you'll be a lot less stressed, you'll be a lot less overwhelmed in grad school because you know exactly what to focus on, you know exactly how to get from point A to point B, and you're not making a ton of mistakes as much as you would if you didn't know how to do this. So now we're going to talk about the assumption that costs most graduate students their time and happiness, often without even realizing it. And so that is one assumption, that when you start grad school and even the first or second year, or even later in grad school, you think, okay, you're a grad student, you have all of these projects. So the assumption that you have in grad school is, oh, I will learn everything in grad school that I need to be successful. And that assumption is strictly wrong, because scientific communication classes are either not available, they're not for credit, they're not prioritized, they're not taught well, and professors are often too busy to teach their trainees one-on-one on how to write and publish. And so often you are left to your own devices, or are expected to figure things out on your own. And so, which is oftentimes what makes people frustrated. And so that's exactly what we want to prevent, right? So now let's talk about the ideas framework for writing a paper. And this is how I write my own papers in really, a matter of weeks. So I stands for imagine, D stands for draft and document, E stands for establish and express, A stands for adjust, and S stands for submit. So I stands for imagine, and this is what you do before you start writing, and you think about questions such as what is the type of the paper that you want to publish, who is your audience, how you share that with your co-authors to actually get feedback in a timely manner. What is the order in which you're going to write the sections? What type of journal you want to submit this to? And so you can think about a lot of these things before you even start writing a single word. And this is the preparation for you to go through so that you're not struggling with writer's block. D stands for draft and document. So you're going to draft the methods and the introduction, and you document what you did. So this is the part where you actually start writing. So you're going to think about the title, your authors and co-authors. You think about the writing style, how you're going to write it, and then you're actually going to write the methods and the introduction. Then the E stands for establish and express. And so you're going to establish the storyline, and then you're going to express what you want to say. And this is really the meat of the paper, where you're going to write the results and discussion sections. You're going to look at the data, you've got to figure out what your storyline is going to be. You're going to make these publication quality figures. Then you're going to write the results section, you're going to write the discussion section. And then lastly, the abstract and the conclusion. And then A stands for adjust, which basically means you're going to write the additional sections, you're going to edit the paper, you're going to finalize it, you're going to write the references, you're going to finalize the supplement, you're going to go over the title again to optimize your title, you're going to edit your manuscript for understanding so that you have a clear writing style. You're also going to write additional sections, the author order, and last but not least, getting feedback. And then S, the last one, stands for submit. So you're getting ready for submission. You think about whether you want to put your paper on preprint servers. You think about whether you want to write a pre-submission inquiry. Then you have to write your cover letter. And once it's actually gone through the revisions, address the reviewers' comments. So, but before we get into how this actually can save you a lot of time and headache using that ideas framework, if you like this type of content, hit the subscribe button so you know when the next video in the series comes out. And if you find this video helpful, share it with a friend or lab mate to support them in their academic journey. So how can you use the ideas framework to ditch writer's block and actually get your paper written and accepted in a fraction of time? When you struggle with writer's block, the mistake that most people make is that they start writing without thinking about anything first. But using the ideas framework, we first imagine what we're going to write about, which journal we're going to submit this to, who our audience is, before we start writing anything. And so how you can use this to cut writing time down to a fraction of the time. I followed this exact framework to go from 1.5 years of writing for my first paper. It was really a pain. I hated the process. I've gone through 18 rounds of revision between, my 2 PIs. So it was really a pain. It was terrible. And so this was my first paper. My second paper took me 2 weeks of writing. It went through minor edits, and it actually got me the Best Paper Award. But here's a common misconception that a lot of people have is that, oh, writing is something you either know how to do or you don't, or this is one of the innate skills that you have, and you can't teach me how to write. And that is wrong, because the truth really is that technical writing is a learnable skill, and you can follow the strategy that I'm basically teaching you in this series of 6 videos to write your own paper in a fraction of the time. So again, there's a roadmap you can follow. It's like really following a recipe for baking cake. And that's also one of the things, that ideas framework is how I taught my about 30 trainees over the last 10 years how to write and publish their papers. So if you want me to do the same for you, join us in the Zero-To-Publish program by following the link in the description. And if you want to learn how to write and publish a paper, there's also lots of links in the description for free resources that you can use. Thank you so much for watching. In my next video, which will be the second part of the series, I will be going into a lot more detail of the imagine part, to get you prepared for your paper.